the day's headlines. South Korea and the US are set for their second working group meeting on North Korea-related issues. Seoul is hoping to convince Washington to loosen sanctions on the regime. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the Trump administration is still fully committed to ensuring North Korea sticks to its pledge to denuclearize. He also says a second Kim-Trump summit should happen in the coming months. Plus, stocks plunge yet again on Wall Street, chopping hundreds more points off the Dow Jones Industrial Average. The Dow is having its worst December since 1931, but analysts say the worst is still yet to come. Our top story this morning, the visiting US Special Envoy for North Korea went to the demilitarized zone, the DMZ, on Thursday. Stephen Biegun wanted to see for himself how much that part of the border has changed since Seoul and Pyongyang started reducing military tensions along the DMZ. Biegun still has more meetings lined up with South Korean officials on this Friday to discuss various matters related to Pyongyang. Our Park Hee-jun starts us off.
U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun has visited the truce village of Panmunjom for the first time. According to an official at Seoul's foreign ministry, he went to see firsthand what the two Koreas have done to disarm the joint security area as agreed at their summit in September. Panmunjom is often used for diplomacy between the U.S. and North Korea, but Biegun did not meet with any North Koreans this time. In the evening, Biegun attended a brief bilateral meeting and a dinner banquet with his South Korean counterpart, Special Representative for Korean Peninsula Peace and Security Affairs Lee Do-hun. Biegun's fifth visit to Seoul comes amid a months-long stalemate in the denuclearization talks between Pyongyang and Washington. And with this visit comes an apparent gesture of goodwill, showing that the U.S. is still committed to dialogue. Upon his arrival in Korea on Wednesday, Biegun said the U.S. will review its policy on humanitarian aid for North Korea. And he said it will also consider allowing American citizens to travel to the north to participate and monitor the aid programs. On Friday, the U.S. and South Korea will hold the second meeting of their working group on North Korea. The agenda will include denuclearization and various issues concerning inter-Korean cooperation projects. That includes a ceremony slated for December 26th, in which the two Koreas will symbolically break ground on work to reconnect their railways and roads. One issue there is the possibility the event could violate sanctions. Also on Friday, Biegun will stop by the Blue House and the Unification Ministry. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
America's top diplomat has reaffirmed the US is still working hard to get North Korea to abandon its nuclear weapons program. Mike Pompeo also expressed hope that a second North Korea-US summit could happen early next year. Lee Seung-jae with the details.
In an interview with a Kansas-based radio show Thursday, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo reiterated Washington's efforts to follow through on North Korea's commitment to dismantle its nuclear weapons program. Pompeo also expressed hope that a second Kim-Trump summit could take place soon, saying Washington is hopeful the two leaders will, quote, get together not too long after the first of the year and make even further progress on taking this threat away from the U.S. His remarks come after the North's state-run news agency issued a blistering commentary hours earlier, slamming the U.S. for its, quote, misguided understanding of denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. The Korean Central News Agency added that nowhere in their joint statement signed in Singapore in June did the two leaders commit to the denuclearization of North Korea. It stressed that denuclearization refers to the Korean Peninsula as a whole, which includes areas where U.S. nuclear weapons are deployed in the South. The commentary also criticized Pompeo personally for asserting that Kim Jong-un committed to the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea, calling it something aghast. Watchers say recent commentaries by the North state-run mouthpieces may indicate a delay in the much-anticipated second summit between Kim and President Trump. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korean officials are heading north of the border on this Friday to inspect roads in North Korea. They will be checking a 100-kilometre stretch of road on the eastern coast for 3 days and a 4-kilometre section in the west next Monday. Seoul says the inspections will be on-site visits without equipment and therefore 4 days is sufficient time to get it done. The inspections come ahead of a groundbreaking ceremony the two Koreas are planning to hold next Wednesday to mark connecting and modernising their railways and roads. The two sides finished inspecting rail lines in North Korea earlier this month. South Korea's 4 biggest taxi unions staged a huge rally on Thursday in front of the National Assembly in Seoul to protest the launch of a new carpool service. It would mean greater convenience for commuters and those struggling to get home late at night, but cab drivers are adamant Kakao's latest service will do more harm than good. Yoon Jung-min reports.
Taxi drivers all across Korea went on a 24-hour strike on Thursday morning and staged a massive rally in Seoul to protest against Kakao Mobility's move to launch a carpool or ride-sharing service. The country's 4 major taxi labor unions staged their 3rd large-scale rally at 2 p.m. in front of the National Assembly. Some roads in the capital, including 의사당대로 in front of the National Assembly, were blocked. The Seoul government put on more subways and buses during commuting hours to minimize traffic congestion. The move by the government and the carpool business to launch the ride-sharing service has been causing a strong backlash from taxi drivers who claim their livelihoods will be threatened if the service opens. The current transportation law allows the commercial use of private vehicles, but only during commuting hours.
Originally, the carpool service was allowed for good purposes, but it started to expand as a business to pursue profits. We call for an abolishment of this. We are also worried about possible harm for citizens due to unprofessional drivers.
This month, a 57-year-old taxi driver burned himself to death to protest against the service. Kakao Mobility originally planned to launch their business this week, but announced they would delay it. The government and the ruling party have set up a dialogue body, including representatives of the 4 taxi unions and the carpool business to try to resolve the conflict. Some citizens, on the other hand, have criticized the protest, claiming the car-sharing service will increase convenience for citizens and boost the shared economy.
I understand the difficult situation of taxi drivers, but this is also part of the market system. As a citizen, I expect this new system or shared economy will allow new, better service.
Despite the government's attempt to solve the conflict through dialogue, it is not likely to be quick or easy for the taxi and carpool industries to reach a consensus. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's producer prices dipped on month in November. This was mainly due to a drop in international oil prices and stabilizing agricultural goods prices after they peaked back in the summer. Data released by the Bank of Korea on Friday shows producer prices in November edged down 0.7% compared to the previous month. Prices of agricultural goods fell by more than 5%, while coal and petroleum goods plunged more than 8%. Prices of Dubai crude, which is Korea's benchmark, tumbled more than 17% compared to the previous month to trade at an average of $65. Forbes magazine has released its annual ranking of the best countries for business. South Korea was ranked 16th. That's up 3 spots from a year before. Forbes rates each of the 161 countries on the list based on 15 different factors, including property rights, innovation and technology. South Korea was 1 spot ahead of the US and a couple of notches above Japan. Despite the uncertainty surrounding Brexit, the United Kingdom topped the list for the 2nd straight year. Sweden was 2nd. Hong Kong was the highest ranked Asian nation on the list, coming in at number 3. US stocks were down yet again on Thursday on threat of a partial government shutdown plus concerns over the Federal Reserve raising rates. President Trump told House Republicans that he will not sign a government funding bill unless it includes more funding for border security. The Dow dropped well over 450 points, or nearly 2%, and the S&P 500 slumped 1.6%. The tech-heavy Kosdaq also suffered a hit, falling 1.6%. If the Dow finishes the year at its current level, it will post its worst year since 2008. Now it's time to take a look at the stories dominating headlines around the world, and for that we turn, as always, to our Noah Aram. So Aram, if you're there, if you can just walk us through what you're planning to tell us this morning.
Okay, there I am. Okay, good morning, Mark. Well, today we start with the aftermath of President Trump's decision to withdraw US troops from Syria after he declared victory over the Islamic State terrorist group. He took to Twitter on Thursday to defend the move after he faced strong backlash from fellow Republicans and Democrats, as well as some US allies who questioned his claim that ISIS was defeated. They fear the withdrawal may see the terrorist group re-emerge. They are also concerned the move will cede US influence in the region to rivals Russia and Iran. Trump posted that getting out of Syria was no surprise, as he has publicly campaigned on it during his presidency. He added that he had waited long enough and that it was time to, quote, come home and rebuild. Trump then posted another tweet announcing that US Defense Secretary James Mattis would be stepping down at the end of next February. In his resignation letter, Mattis indicated he was resigning over differences with the president's policies. The retired Marine general also stressed the importance of US cooperation with allies, many of which have become frayed under President Trump. Trump's decision to pull troops out of Syria reportedly went against the wishes of his own defense officials. The US Justice Department has indicted 2 Chinese men accused of hacking into the computer systems of American government agencies and corporations. The 2 men are believed to be part of a hacking group affiliated with the Chinese government. They are suspected of carrying out cyber attacks to steal intellectual property and personal information belonging to US military service members. The pair have been charged with conspiracy to commit computer intrusions, conspiracy to commit wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. The indictments come amid rising trade tensions between US and China. Travel chaos has erupted at one of Britain's busiest airports after large drones forced all flights there to be cancelled. London's Gatwick airport has been closed since Wednesday night local time, and the British Army has even been deployed to help resolve the situation. One of the options being considered is shooting down the drones. Police, meanwhile, are still on the hunt for those responsible. Tens of thousands of travellers have been stranded, and passengers due to fly on Thursday and Friday have been advised to check their flight status before going to the airport. Police said the drone activity was not terror-related, but was a, quote, deliberate act of disruption.
"2018 is starting to wind down, and what a year it has been for the 2 Koreas. 3 inter-Korean summits, a sharp reduction in military tensions, and even a joint Olympic team along the way. Over the next week and a half or so, we're going to look back at the top 10 domestic and international stories of the year. We'll have one of each every day through New Year's Eve, but since today is the first day of these special reports, we're going to focus on 2 big stories that happened on the Korean Peninsula and 1 international story. We start with the remarkable steps to peace the 2 Koreas took over the past 12 months. Taking a look back for us is our Shin Se-min.
The leaders of South and North Korea shaking hands at the world's most heavily fortified border, the first such meeting in over a decade, signaling the start of a new era of peace. And the firm handshake and warm embrace between President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was just the first of 3 such meetings in 2018, with the two proving to early skeptics that they plan to keep their promises.
제 임기 중에 북핵 문제를 해결하고 평화를 공고하게 하는 것이 저의 목표입니다.
무엇보다 북남 사이의 첨예한 군사적 긴장 상태를 완화하고 조선 반대의 평화적 환경부터 마련해야 합니다.
Backing their verbal pledges with action, the first summit produced the Panmunjom Declaration, which assured the world that military conflict would never again scar the Korean Peninsula. It included working to officially bring an end to the Korean War, the opening of a liaison office in the north's border town of Kaesong, and allowing families separated during the war to meet again. The leaders also agreed to meet again and set up a direct hotline so they could hold candid discussions. And that's exactly what they did. On May 26th, President Moon held an impromptu meeting with the North Korean leader, this time to salvage another meeting, a summit between Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump, scheduled for June 12th in Singapore. And after President Moon helped close the gap between the once archest of enemies, the leaders of Pyongyang and Washington had their first summit in history, where, among other things, Kim and Trump committed to work toward denuclearization as well as lasting peace and prosperity. A couple of months later, when working-level talks between the North and the U.S. seemed to have hit another wall, with President Trump canceling his top diplomat's trip to Pyongyang over the stalled nuclear talks, President Moon stepped in again as the mediator-in-chief. The 3 days President Moon spent in North Korea in mid-September resulted in the Pyongyang Declaration. It set off a wave of inter-Korean endeavors, joint economic projects on rail and roads, the dismantlement of DMZ guard posts by December, followed by mutual verification, and a reciprocal visit to Seoul by Kim at the earliest possible date. And of course, their personal relationship grew stronger, leading to the exchange of gifts like the finest North Korean mushrooms, juicy tangerines from Jeju Island, and even traditional Korean breeds of dogs. However, a handful of promises made by the two leaders have yet to be materialized, like a declaration on officially ending the war and Kim's visit to Seoul by year's end, in what would be the first ever visit to the South Korean capital by a North Korean leader since the peninsula was divided. Despite the undeniable progress made this year, maintaining friendly ties will remain a challenge in 2019. It's still unclear whether concessions will come from the North and the U.S. to grease the tracks toward denuclearization, but both Koreas seem firmly on track to cement a powerful reconditioning of relations on the Korean Peninsula. 신세민, Arirang News.
So let's continue our series of reports looking back on 2018. And during their 3 summits this year, President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un discussed how the two Koreas can work together. Seoul has been stressing the importance of inter-Korean cooperation as a means to really encourage the North to be serious about abandoning its nuclear weapons. Our Oh Jung-hee walks us through the key areas of inter-Korean cooperation this year.
Lowering military tensions and communicating 24/7 while cooperating in a range of fields from the economy to humanitarian issues. That's how the inter-Korean relations, which were cold and hostile until last year, can be summed up for 2018. South and North Korea held several talks throughout 2018 to implement the summit agreements on railway and road connections, forestry cooperation, and health and medical care. Though they face some restrictions due to international sanctions, they're conducting joint inspections on railways and roads and are looking to hold a ceremony next Wednesday to mark their joint project. South Korea has delivered chemicals for pest control to the north and conducted some actual operations on the ground. It's also looking to share data with the north on contagious diseases for cooperation in public health. Efforts are being made on the humanitarian front as well, especially for thousands of families separated by the Korean War. The two Koreas held reunions for war-torn families for the first time in 3 years in August and are now looking to enable video reunions and restore meeting facilities. All these matters, from setting up talks to exchanging documents to devise work plans, are dealt with at the Joint Liaison Office. It's where both South and North Korean officials work and stay for direct face-to-face communication. Meanwhile, the area where the two Koreas have made the most significant progress is on the military front. Following through with the military agreement signed in September, Seoul and Pyongyang have dismantled guard posts located within 1 kilometer of the military demarcation line. This is part of attempts to show their willingness to stop hostile acts. They've also linked up a road connecting each other across the DMZ to together recover remains from the Korean War. In 2019, it's expected that inter-Korean interactions and exchanges will only deepen further with regular inter-Korean talks. Seoul's goals are to create permanent peace on the Korean Peninsula, build a sustainable relationship, and finally form an economic community with the North. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
So let's shift our focus now to one of the top international news stories of 2018, and it's hard to overstate how much of an impact the US-China trade war has had on the global economy this year. We're going to take a look back at this multi-billion-dollar tariff battle between the world's two economic superpowers that's not only threatening, it's looking very likely to spill into 2019 as well. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
It may be too soon to reprieve upon news China and the U.S. are working to turn their trade truce, forged on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Argentina on December 1st, to something more permanent. The tit-for-tat tariffs executed earlier this year were widely viewed as merely being a cover for a hegemonic fight in the economic, technological, and defense sectors, as China challenges the U.S. Following the trade ceasefire, Washington agreed to delay a tariff increase on more than $250 billion worth of Chinese imports to 25%, from 10% originally planned to go into effect on January 1st, while China agreed to resume purchases of U.S. farm and energy commodities. They're reportedly planning to hold meetings to hammer out a deal on trade next month. Reducing U.S. trade deficit in its trade with China, which recorded $375 billion last year, was cited as a major priority for the Trump administration, according to U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin in an interview with Bloomberg earlier this week. He said it's to map out a specific timeline, both realistic and verifiable, that the two countries can carry out. But concerns still loom on the notion of how they'll iron out their differences. Two main questions reverberate. If the truce is temporary and will only last 90 days, is it reasonable for the U.S. to expect sweeping reforms concerning market access and intellectual property rights, regulatory reforms in this short span of time? And if China presses on with these measures, would these not shock the Chinese economy? The International Monetary Fund has already forecast China is set to record the slowest growth rate in 28 years in 2018 of 6.6%, putting a damper on the industrial plan of President Xi Jinping's Made in China 2025 to become a global powerhouse by 2049. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Good morning. It's another day you'll want to put on your face mask, but at least you can wear a lighter jacket. Most of Korea has been in the grip of toxic smog for nearly a week now. And for today, except Gangwon-do province and Jeju, most of us will have to deal with a thick coat of dust with fine and ultra-fine dust advisory being in place for Chungcheong-do and Jeollado provinces. But temperatures will stay nice for mid-December. Daily highs will be similar or marginally higher than yesterday, getting up to 9 degrees here in the capital. Busan and Gwangju will get up to 17 degrees this afternoon, while there is a sporadic showers in the forecast for southern coastal regions and on Jeju Island. Mild temperatures and dusty conditions should stay through the weekend. Now, tomorrow is going to be mild, and which is Dongji, the winter solstice. Then next week, colder air along with biting winds, but cleaner air are expected. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Okay, well, we've run out of time for now on this Friday morning here in Seoul. Do stay tuned to Arirang TV, and a reminder, as I normally provide you with, our next newscast is coming up at noon Korea time with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. But if we don't see you again, have a wonderful weekend. Until next time, goodbye.